Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Cherie Best. You're listening to the Just Love Them podcast. Join me on a journey to understand and find peace with those we love who have left their faith. As you listen to these episodes, listen for what resonates with you and take from these episodes what will help you in your life and in your situation. Today, I have with me Melanie. Melanie is a BYU graduate and has been a lifelong member of the church. She believes in faith, obedience, and sacrifice, but started her journey thinking out that meant checking off boxes. In other words, her natural inclination has been to be task-oriented. Melanie feels like God has been on a mission to teach her in a different way. Among other callings, she has served a mission with her husband in Spokane, Washington for 3 years and at the MTC for 4 years. She currently teaches at BYU part-time in the religion department. She has 5 children and 5 beautiful granddaughters. Melanie, welcome.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Cherie.
Yes, I'm glad to have you here. So to begin with, let's let our listeners get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about why you're on this podcast?
I really loved believing everything I heard about the things I should do to raise my children. And I was all in and loved feeling like I was going to have the perfect family and we were going to follow the perfect path. And if I do this, then this will happen. I totally just bought into all of that. And I think that I was receiving the wrong message the whole time. So, yeah, as I was raising my children, I really thought that we would live the perfect life. And I was going to read my scriptures with them, and we were going to pray, and we were going to go to church. And we were very much into making the gospel a priority, which I think was absolutely right. And like when we went on vacation, we would always make sure we went to church. Once our children were all in school, we started going to the temple every other week. And then eventually we went every week for years and years and years. And I think what happened to me is I felt like, just like what I said, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P is going to happen.
I
And so
totally get that. I've been
yeah.
there too.
And so when it didn't happen, I was destroyed. Like I was heartbroken and devastated. And I think destroyed is a very good word.
It is a very good word.
Yeah. When we were living with young children in our home, I just saw so much beauty and so much promise. And I had 5 very independent children, but I just always felt like I could fix everything and I could make it happen. Like we're all going to get along. I'm just going to keep working on that. We're all going to be, going on missions, and I'm just going to keep working on that. We're all going to, I even thought we're all going to get straight A's and go to BYU, and that is going to happen. And we can make that happen. We had a lot of mental health issues. We had ADHD, we had OCD, a mood disorder. One of our daughters was diagnosed with kind of high functioning Asperger's, some depression, some anxiety. And even through all of that, I just felt like we're going to get therapy, and we're going to find out the best way to handle these issues, and we're going to work it all out, and it's all going to be, I don't know what was wrong with me, but I thought it was going to be perfect.
Well, I think when you're young, you think that you're invincible and that you can make anything happen. I know that's how I kind of felt, like, oh, we can make anything happen. We're in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's beautiful because there's so much hope.
Yeah.
But when your expectations then aren't met, it makes it very difficult because it's so opposite of what you thought.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because while it's great to have hope and it's great to have aspirations and it's great to have all of the vision of what you want to have happen, I think the thing that we sometimes forget about is that we're only in charge of our agency. We
That's
don't
right.
get to actually choose in the end what other people choose.
Really?
So shocking. So tell me what happened as your kids grew up and they started exercising their independence. How did that play out? What did that look like?
Well, our first 2 children were great. They followed the plan. They they got into BYU and they went on missions and they came home and got married in the temple. And we, at the time, were on a mission. So my husband and I were called on a mission. And we had taken with us our fourth and fifth children. They were our youngest, and they were going to be seniors in high school. They were twin boys, and we had a really good relationship with them all growing up. They were like our ones that were the easiest. They were very easily entreated, very obedient, just so easy to work with. And I was just super good friends with them. We had done a lot of fun activities together. We had a really close relationship. I was very, very bonded to all of my children, but to them especially because they were just so easy growing up. And when we went on our mission and took them with us, their senior years turned out to be opposite of each other. We had our fourth child, the first twin, had a great senior year. He was so happy, loved the gospel, going on a mission. And then our other twin boy he struggled. And we had a spiritual experience when he was young, like 3 years old, that he might be gay. I don't remember the details around it. All I remember, though, is just growing up with kind of a spiritual impression that he may be gay. My husband and I both felt that way, but we don't remember why. We just remember we received this impression. So when he was going through puberty, sure enough, he had same-sex attraction. And we worked with that. We talked to therapists, and he still felt like he could go on a mission. He still felt like he could get married in the temple at that time. But then when we went on our mission and he was in a different high school, a different environment, he decided that it was going to be in his words, more fulfilling for him to live a gay lifestyle. I just remember feeling like at that time, just incredibly grateful for the atonement of Jesus Christ. Like that was my whole permeating feeling was, I am so grateful for a Savior because this is going to be a different experience than what we had anticipated. But he started changing. He was a saver and he became a spender. He was clean. He became dirty. He was a straight A student. He's got a D.
Wow.
It was just like, he was very, very truthful. And then all of a sudden he was lying. In my perspective, he just started changing in every way. And I, at the time, felt like, oh, I just need to teach him. I just need to talk to him. I just need to make sure he sees clearly. And it seemed like the more I talked, the more points I made, the angrier he got. It wasn't what he needed. And it really drew a barrier between the two of us. Like I said before, I was super bonded, very, very connected to them. This was a learning experience for me. And as I went through the experience, I still had so much hope. I still felt like, oh, we're just going to get through this and we're going to figure it out and it's going to be okay. I had some dreams. I felt like they were visions from God that kind of warned me to warn him. I did that. And I'm glad I did that, but it was very difficult on the relationship. He did end up graduating from high school. He did go to BYU, and that was a miserable experience for him. And he eventually turned to drugs and got involved in a lifestyle that changed his world. And of course, we're on a mission. By this time, we're in our second year of our mission. And I don't really know anything about drugs. We taught our kids not to do drugs, but I don't know anything about drugs myself.
Yeah.
So he was living in our basement apartment of our home back in Utah. And my son-in-law and my daughter were living there. They were married and they were living there with him. And they would just say things like, he's living in the dark. He's not eating. He's not going to class. They were super, super concerned about him. And it was actually hard on their marriage because it was not a good spirit. And they were so full of worry. And I didn't know what it was. I had no idea what it was. I thought maybe he's addicted to pornography and that's really causing a dark spirit in his life. I didn't know.
Yeah.
But through a series of really, really inspiration, I felt like God just kind of spoke to us. We were able to get him to come back to Spokane, and we found out it was drugs.
Mm.
In the meantime, my other son, the other twin, was on a mission, and he was not having a good experience. He'd gone on a mission, and the one had gone to BYU, and he wasn't having a good experience. And we're on a mission, and we're just helping all these missionaries. I felt like we were making such a big difference, and I felt like God was just blessing us so much to be able to love and help and serve them. But then our son, who was on a mission, was just struggling in every way. And it was really hard to get him help. Finally, after a year of serving, he was going to come home and have a back procedure. And so it was just God's divine intervention that he came home from his mission right when his twin was coming home from his year of BYU. And they came together into our home, and it was like fireworks went off. Both were in both of them were in horrible places, and it was brutal. It was brutal on us.
That
So
sounds very brutal.
it was just so much. It was like hate. It was like, we were friends last week. What happened?
Wow.
So they just fed off of each other, and it was just like the worst. So it was shocking to me. I just never ever thought these two beautiful boys who we had just had so much love all of a sudden would think we were the worst. And later in life, when they kind of came through all of this and the relationship got better, they just said that, well, my one son just said, I felt so bad about myself that I had to have somebody to blame. I just needed somebody to blame because it was just too painful for me.
Wow. It's great to
And
have that understanding. I mean,
yeah, it was years before he finally came to a place where he could verbalize what was going on at that time. But that's where we were at. We didn't know how to handle it. We didn't know what was happening. We were just trying to feel the spirit the best that we could and serve this mission and try to have love in our home. But eventually we found out it was drugs through a series of miracles, and we got him, our one of the twin, the one that was struggling with drug addiction and being gay. We got him to a rehab program, and then our other son stayed in our home, and that relationship just got worse and worse, and he was just struggling. He also was having faith questions, feeling like God had betrayed him and kind of abandoned him. And it was hard to see him go through that. It was very difficult. And
yeah.
we cried a lot. We prayed a ton that whole time. We just felt like our lives were falling apart. We just felt like by this time it was our third year of our mission, and we were just hanging on, just every day feeling like the Lord carried us, and every day just watching our family implode. Like every child, not just those two boys, but every child was struggling with something
Wow.
big.
And no power to change it.
Yeah, it was difficult because you're doing the best you can, but you have this daily job. I remember one time we were in a missionary training, and I was serving lunch, and I was in the kitchen cleaning up, and I literally had not heard from my son in 2 days. And he wasn't answering his phone, which was not like him. Even though the relationship was hard, he would always answer his phone. But he hadn't answered his phone in 2 days. And I thought it was surreal for me to feel like I could have a son dead in a ditch somewhere, and I'm here serving
Wow.
the Lord, feeding missionaries, and I
Right.
have no idea where my son is.
Hmm.
So it was just experiences like that every day where I just felt like we were in this very surreal experience. But through a series of miracles, I just felt like God really helped us. We got him into a program where he went to an in-house program. So, and then our other son went to Utah to live with some relatives. And we were able to finish our mission alone for probably the last 3 months. And that was so helpful. But when we came home, then everything got worse. It was like we had to face the music.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and that was brutal too. Like it was just our finances were bad. My mother died 3 weeks after we got home, which was devastating. We came right home and drove right to her condo, and our family was struggling taking care of her. And we met them there with her, and I took care of her for 3 weeks until she passed away. And then my husband, who had done this great job, gets Parkinson's.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
my husband jokes and says, "Well, maybe I didn't do a good job as I thought I did." But yeah, so 2 weeks after we got home, he got Parkinson's. 3 weeks after we got home, my mother died. We're kind of having to face the music with all of our kids and our finances. And I just literally was destroyed. I felt like everything I had ever believed or been taught or put my hope in was gone.
Wow.
And I look back at that and I think, I don't know why that was so difficult, except because of what I had thought, because of the expectations I had, because I had put so much work and effort and energy. And I instantly almost thought, like, what a waste. Like, I wasted my life because I quit working, which I was doing a job that I absolutely loved because I felt like God wanted me to stay home. And I'd put all that work and effort and energy in. I'm just being honest right now, okay?
Oh, absolutely. That is what we want.
I did. I just felt like, oh man, all of that was a waste. I wasted my life. And I just had to face everything and start from the ground up, kind of learning myself, trying to listen and trying to stay faithful. I had this thing in my mind that really hurt me spiritually, which was I just started having this mantra. It was like this voice in my head over and over again that God wasn't going to bless us. And I had to
Oh, wow.
fight against it by saying scriptures. Every day I would just like fill my heart with scriptures like believe in God, believe that He is, believe that He has all power and all wisdom, both in heaven and in earth.
Yeah, because at that time it would have been so easy to gather so much evidence to the negative if you didn't have those scriptures if you didn't have something to counterbalance what that mantra was that God wasn't going to bless you. You could have gathered so much evidence. See, he
Yeah,
isn't blessing me. See, he isn't blessing me.
yeah,
So
yeah.
how did you, wow, that's just, how did you come up with something to counteract that?
I think, as I look back and I think, what did I learn? How did I change? What happened? I feel like the very first thing was scripture. It was having the words of God in my mind because I felt like I was being plummeted on all sides with feelings of hopelessness and just the brutality of the experiences we were having and what it was doing to me. I fell into a deep depression. So it was the words of God, but I also felt like God was speaking to me. I just had to hold on to what He was saying. It helped me so much because I heard words like, hold on, I'll get you there. I heard that all the time.
Wow.
And the other thing I heard all the time was, I know what you need more than you know what you need. That was really hard for me, but I heard that all the time. And I would just be like, I almost felt like God didn't give all of this to me because there was no way a loving God would have given me this because it was destroying me.
Mm,
There were things I did emotionally and mentally so that I could survive. And one of them was, this is just life. This is just the natural course of life. God didn't really give this all to me. This is just me living out life in a normal way because we're fallen people and we're around other fallen people, and this world is fallen, that we're just going to go through natural stuff. That helped me because I just felt like God loves me and I can hear His messages. I just need to hold on to them. So I heard His voice, and I knew it was what I needed to do was just fill my heart and mind with His words, and then also listen to what His words were personally to me, not just scripture words, but His personal words to me. And eventually, I think the very first thing that helped me with my children was something that we talked about. My really, really good friend, Cherie Best, um, taught me about emotional distance. On my mission, you talked about that to me. I never really got it. But when we got home from our mission and things were so bad, I had to learn this. And I felt like God walked me through it. And it was just a feeling of cutting ties that I needed to create emotional distance with these boys who the situation was destroying me. I needed to create a situation that I could survive, and I needed emotional distance. So I just had this visual of just cutting those ties and disconnecting from their lives, that their lives were not my life. Their choices and decisions were not my choices and decisions. And that I kind of had this visual that I was in a bubble and that they were in a bubble. And I was not to go into their bubble without being invited. And that helped me so much because I felt like layers of learning came to me based on the foundation of emotional distance. And I have to tell you that some of the times these things did not feel natural to me because I felt God say to me, like, listen to them, look at them, pay attention to them. They do not need you to teach them anything. That felt like, oh, aren't I supposed to teach them stuff? You know, aren't I
Because that's
supposed to
what
talk
moms
to
do.
them? And it was even sometimes I heard, don't jump up and go hug them when they leave. It's not what they need. Look at them, see them. They don't need you to ask how their day was. They don't need you to say, what are you going to do today? Or, I thought I was just showing love by hugging them and asking them questions and, trying to teach them good things. And it was like, I felt like God was just saying, look at them, see them, pay attention. They are communicating with you.
It's so interesting because sometimes we're so busy putting so much into the relationship, especially like as a mother. We're putting so much into the relationship to make sure that they know that we love them, to make sure that all of these things. It's so interesting you would say that that's not what they needed, because that's what emotional distance has to do with, is meeting them where they're at. And it's sometimes very foreign to do that.
That's exactly what it felt like. It felt foreign. Like, is this love? This doesn't feel like love to me because I thought love meant that I'm always going to pay attention and I'm always going to hug them and kiss them and I want them to know that I love them, and it looks like this. So when I started really listening to the spirit that was saying, don't look at them, see what they need, they are communicating that they don't want that. It was like this, I learned this level of respect that I never knew before. I didn't know that respect meant to give them what they wanted, which was they didn't want that from me. And so I felt God just helped me so much in seeing that this respect meant that they get to have what they want. And so I stopped trying to talk. I stopped trying to teach. I stopped trying to check on them. I just felt like that was what they needed. And I'm in a bubble and they're in a bubble, and that I didn't have to have things my way, that they get to have things their way, and that's beautiful. I would just also interject right now that perfect path, I felt like God was teaching me that my perfect path wasn't their perfect path. I think that's sometimes hard for us to recognize because we think, of course, we should like learn in this way, and this is the way we should do it.
And it's the only way.
And it's the only good way,
Yes.
and and it's like, I felt like these things I was learning from God were kind of specific and very focused towards me and my learning, which was different than what I feel like this ideal that I had learned before from the church. And so that specific to me was that their learning path is fine for them. It's like that God's plan of salvation is perfect, and it's very specific for you individually. And sometimes the perfect path is not the way a child's going to learn. For me, it worked great. I had a heart that worked great for me. But for my children, I felt like God was saying they have different heart than you. They have a different mind than you.
Yeah.
And this learning journey for them is going to be different than yours. And you need to respect it.
And sometimes it's really painful to get to the place where you're okay with it, where you are willing to allow it, where you're willing to see it happening and not be hurt or devastated by it. Did you come around to that place? How did you get to that place where you were comfortable with it? Were you comfortable? Are you
I
comfortable?
I absolutely am. I am just projecting into the future. It took years, but I felt like everything God said to me was true. That as I gave them what they needed, they healed. As I respected them and their way and their journey and their path and their choices, they healed. So like now I feel so different now. I just feel like so much love, and I just feel like peace. I feel the relationship is so good now, but it took years because at that time they needed to trust me again. And as they could see that I wasn't trying to teach them, I wasn't trying to make a point, I'm not trying to, judge them or anything. I felt like what God taught me was emotional distance. This is so interesting, but I learned when I cut ties with them and I gave them their own individual life separate from me, and I was not connected to them in any way. My life is completely independent to me. Their life is completely independent to them. It gave me freedom to love them,
Oh,
which was the most, I never expected that kind of side effect, but it made it so that I loved them no matter what they did. Because see, it wasn't connected to me. It wasn't about me. So I was totally free to love them. It was very interesting to me. I did not expect that, but I just felt so much love. And I understood for the first time because of this experience when they say God loves you no matter what you do. I never really believed that, I don't think, because I had always associated love with you do this, you're loved. Of course, when you do all these right things and you're obedient and you're working hard, God loves you, or you love whoever else is doing that for you. So this was the first time in my life, like God was changing me. And I felt this realization and awareness because of my own experience that God really does love you no matter what you do. And
yeah.
that was such a foreign thought to me and a foreign realization. But as I lived it, and it was like these two sons, no matter what they did, I love them so much. It had nothing to do with what they were doing. I could just see so much good. And I totally changed. I feel like I changed. And that whole process of journey of them coming back to us, building trust and love, and just loving them in the way that they needed, not in the way that I thought it looked like, but paying attention to what they needed
I
and being
love that.
able to give it to them the way that they needed.
You've described how you feel about them. Where are they at with you? Have they come back all the way, or how do you feel that they are with you now?
I think that's what's so interesting to me because I feel so different, but I don't think any of that's changed. Like they still don't come to church. I think they have belief in a higher power or they have belief in like Mother Nature, things like that. But they still do all those things
Yeah.
that they started doing. I don't know. I don't see it. All I can see is how hardworking they are and how I would also add though that see, cutting ties and letting them live their own life, they have been taught. Like God's plan really is so good
Hmm.
because they did a lot of things that taught them along the way and they learned through their own experience like oh I don't want to do that and oh that was really bad, let's avoid that. And I just think their own experiences taught them, so they're responsible in the things that they're doing and the ways that they experiment and the ways that they're expressing themselves, but they work hard and they financially take care of themselves and they love the family.
So
They
they have
always
come back. They have come back from that mom and dad are the bad guys to where?
They love us so much and they want to be with the family. This is really interesting because they've actually both lived with us like at times during COVID. This is another story because there's a whole big long story to my son's drug addiction and his, being gay and how we changed towards that. But I feel like as they have learned and grown through their own experience, that they have come to a place of coming back from my son coming back from rehab the second time, and the other son just deciding, I need a better job, I need to get some more education, and them loving living here. But
So a
it doesn't.
completely different experience than before.
Yeah, and they're not teenagers, they're adults, and they act like adults because they've learned from their own experience to appreciate, to feel grateful, to work hard, to be responsible. And I think it was so valuable that that God's plan works. It's like you learn through your own experience, and even those bad things teach you and change you. And it's so beautiful to feel like there's that they come through it and they're different. And so when you say like, how's it changed? It's like I've changed
Yeah.
so much because I see so much light and so much goodness. I see all the good things. But what destroyed me hasn't changed. It's like that's still all there. It's just that I've changed. But the relationship has changed because I just want to say that, like we talk about the side effects, like I learned love and to love them no matter what they do. I learned respect. I learned so much respect. I respect the way their opinions. I respect the way they say things. I respect their timing. If I ask them to do something, I certainly don't think it's my way or the highway. I feel like I'm willing to listen and learn from them. I still try to teach, but I never do it in a way of telling them what to do. I just share my own experience, what I'm learning. And they feel, this is what I see, they feel very respectful towards me and towards my husband too. They're so respectful. So like when they were living in our home, I just felt like the more we respected them, the more they gave that back to us. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I feel like there's so many good side effects to listening to what God tells you, because he gives you layers of things to do and things to try. If we're not caught up in what we think it looks like or what it should look like or what they should be doing, that, if we'll be open, that God can teach us individually, layer upon layer, what they need to help them learn, to help them grow. I just feel like it's been a beautiful experience. It's been a beautiful experience, even though it's been so, like in the beginning, it just destroyed me so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that today. It's beautiful to hear the whole story about how they were when they were little, and then how it became so hard that you felt so destroyed. And then as you've learned to put in emotional distance and respect them, how that has come back to you and how you've learned to just love them. It's such a beautiful story.
It's not something I never thought would happen. I mean, I didn't know that if I show them respect, they'll show me respect. I never knew that. And
Yeah.
if I show them love the way that they need, that love will develop between the two of us. And
Yeah. It's
yeah,
beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing that you've shared, and for our listeners, I hope that it can save someone, like you or me, Melanie, who's gone it's taken years for us to learn that. I hope that for some of our listeners that they can learn that quicker than we did and get there faster.
I think
That
that's a really good point because this
yeah,
is years. It's not like, oh, that happened yesterday. This is like
right.
the whole thing was like 6 or 7 years in the making.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time to be here, for being willing to be vulnerable and to share. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening. If you liked this podcast, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, because that way it will just keep dropping the next episode onto your platform. And we would love for you to stay with us. And so hit that subscribe button And especially listeners, one extra thing I would really ask for you to do for us this week is if you know anyone who you feel like could benefit from this podcast, someone who's struggling with loved ones who've left the faith, please share this with them so that they can get the solace, the understanding, and the peace that they are seeking as well. And join me again next time for another episode of Just Love Them.